On 2015, the Government of India has decided to celebrate 26 November on every year as the Constitution Day or Samvidhan Divas. And this is to enlighten the people of India regarding the importance of Constitution and the various rights that are mentioned in the Constitution. On this occasion, let us study about the Indian Constitution. Hi, it's Fatima Nasrin and welcome to Ekam IAS. The Constitution of India. It is the supreme law of the land, which means that everything is below the Constitution. All the authority that we have, that is the government, the legislature or the judiciary, everything falls under the Constitution. All these bodies derive their power from the Constitution. And the preamble, the introduction to the Constitution, as you can see on the screen, it gives the power or the authority to the people. That means the Constitution empowers the people of India, the ultimate authority. So why on 26 November we have decided to celebrate as the Constitution Day? Because on this day, that is 26 November 1949, we adopted our Indian Constitution. And it came into force on 26 January 1950, where we celebrate our Republic Day. So to commemorate the day on which we adopted our Constitution, we celebrate on every year on 26 November as a Constitution Day or Samvidhan Divas. When we adopted our Constitution in 1949, we had a preamble and it contains 395 articles that are divided into 25 parts, and we had 8 schedules. At present, we have our preamble and more than 450 articles. They are segregated into 25 parts and 12 schedules. So this is the current status of our Indian Constitution. Now let's go back to the history and see the making of Indian Constitution. We know that before independence, we were a British colony. And the laws that we were followed were the British laws. But when India got independence, we have to formulate our own laws. So for that, we have established a Constituent Assembly in order to frame our Constitution. And this Constituent Assembly was partly elected and partly nominated. And it had a temporary president, and it was Dr. Sachidananda Sinha. Later, in December 1946, the Constitution Assembly got a president, that is Dr. Rajendra Prasad, and we had a vice president, H.C. Mukherjee. And this Constitution Assembly constituted many committees, especially like the drafting committee headed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and they all formulated the constitution that we have today. Now let's see what are the salient features of Indian Constitution. When British left India, we were at the edge of poverty, and it was a sudden requirement of the people that it requires a government to rule them properly. So with the limited time, what we have done is that we have taken a lot of constitution from various countries, and we have incorporated or borrowed special features from those countries and added to our Constitution. Hence, our one of the salient feature is that we have borrowed most of the provisions from different parts of the country. So that is one of the salient features. Our Constitution is not the same as that we have adopted in 1949. It has gone through a lot of amendments. So, amendment is also another salient feature of Indian Constitution. Since the geography and the people of India are diverse and it has huge population, the Constitution also is the lengthiest because we have to incorporate all the diversity and we have to make these diversity united under one Constitution. Hence, it is the lengthiest Constitution in the world. And it is also, another feature is that it is a lengthiest written constitution in the world. Written constitution means that the laws are codified. That means we have distinct part for each sections. For example, our more than 450 articles are segregated into 25 parts. For example, part 1, it talks about union and its territories. So, articles corresponding to union and territories are covered in part 1. So that is what is meant by codified. It is systematically arranged. So Indian Constitution is a written constitution, unlike the British Constitution, which is unwritten constitution. So this is another salient feature of Indian Constitution. Next salient feature is a blend of rigid and flexibility. That is, Indian Constitution is neither rigid or flexible. This rigidity and flexibility is in terms of amendability. How easily we can amend our constitution. It is not too easy or it is not that much rigid. So it is a balance between rigidity and flexibility. So this is another feature of our Indian constitution. Unlike US constitution, which gives judicial review a supremacy, whereas the British constitution, which gives parliament the supremacy, we have the balance of two. That is, we have the judicial review and also parliamentary supremacy. The Indian constitution provides for universal adult franchise, which means that any adult whose name is in the electoral roll, who is at the age of 18, has a right to vote irrespective of their caste, religion, gender or etc. Another important feature is that the Indian constitution provides for a federal government with a unitary bias. So federal system means that there will be two government, one at the central level and state level, and the powers will be shared between the central government and state government. But in our constitution, there are certain features that show some unitary bias. For example, emergency provisions, the office of governor, the All India services, etc. So these are some of the salient features of Indian constitution. So when I mentioned about the salient features, I have mentioned that the Indian constitution, most of the provisions in the Indian constitutions are derived from or are borrowed from various constitutions. So let's see what all things we have borrowed and from where we have borrowed. First, the major source is the Government of India Act 1935. The majority of the provisions are taken from this particular act. It is a colonial act, and the major feature is the federal character, especially the federal list, that is the union list, state list, concurrent list. That idea was taken from the Government of India Act 1935. And another features would be the Office of Governor, the Public Service Commission, etc. Next, the British Parliament. Obviously, we have taken some of the features from the British Constitution, not the Parliament, British Constitution. One is the parliamentary form of government. There are two types of government. That is the presidential form of government, where the president and the legislature will be separated. Here we have adopted the parliamentary form of government, and that we have adopted from the British Constitution. Next is the US Constitution. One of the important feature of our Indian Constitution, that is a fundamental right, we have adopted it from the United States Constitution. And then I have said that the judicial review or the independence of judiciary is one of the feature of the American Constitution. So that also we have borrowed from the Constitution of the United States. Then the impeachment of the President of India and the removal of Supreme Court judges and the High Court judges, they are all taken from the Constitution of United States. The part 4 of our Constitution, which talks about the directive principles of state policy or DPSP, we have adopted it from the Irish Constitution. From the Australian Constitution, we have adopted the concurrent list and the joint sitting, the provision of joint sitting when there is a confusion or dilemma between two houses. So the provision of joint sitting and the concurrent list were taken from the Australian Constitution. Suspension of fundamental rights during the emergency was adopted from the Weimar Constitution or the German Constitution. From the Soviet Constitution, the idea of fundamental duties and the ideals, that is justice, that we can see in the preamble, that is the socio-economic and political justice mentioned in the preamble, along with the fundamental duties, are taken from the Soviet Constitution. Then obviously, with the influence of French Revolution, the ideal of liberty, equality and fraternity that is mentioned in the preamble also were taken from the French Constitution. Then finally, from the South Africa, we have taken the procedure to amend the constitution and also the method of election to the Rajya Sabha. So these are some of the major sources from which our Indian constitution has adopted various provisions. So UPSC have asked questions from this area. So you should know, at least you have to study from these areas, from which country and what features. Okay, let's move on. This is your model question for today's session. Try to find the answer and write the answer in the comment section below. The answer, the explanation and the detailed material will be provided in our Telegram channel. The link to our Telegram channel will be provided in the description below. And finally, if you find this video helpful, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching.